She whispered, "I miss you sometimes," from the arms of the man who took my place. For a second I thought I'd imagined it over the music. The DJ had just switched from slow Ed Sheeran to some aggressively upbeat 2010s pop, and everyone around us was laughing, clapping, shouting lyrics they only half remembered. Her new boyfriend, Chris, still had his arms wrapped around her waist, his chin resting on top of her head like he owned the spot. Her perfume hit me first, that same warm vanilla she wore when she used to steal my hoodies, and then I felt her breath against my ear as she leaned in just enough for me to hear. My heart did this horrible lurching thing, like it forgot whose chest it was living in. I pulled back only a fraction, just enough to see her face. The fairy lights strung across the hall threw soft shadows over everything, making it all feel weirdly cinematic. Lily wouldn't look directly at me. Her eyes stayed somewhere around my collarbone, like eye contact might set off an explosion. Chris's hands stayed exactly where they were around her, oblivious. His thumbs rubbing little circles on her hip like this was just another wedding dance, and not the most intense emotional car crash I'd ever been in. My fingers tightened around my drink until the cheap plastic cup creaked. It was my best mate's wedding, Mark and Jess, finally getting around to it after 9 years and 2 kids, and I'd known, like in the abstract, that she would be there. You don't just erase 5 years of shared friends because the ending was messy. I told myself it was fine, mature adults all that, but telling yourself something in your empty 1-bedroom flat and actually standing 3 feet away from your ex while she melts into the guy she left you for are 2 very different experiences. We'd been broken up for just over a year at that point, long enough that everyone had stopped giving me that careful, sideways look when they said her name, short enough that some random song on the radio could still punch me in the chest without warning. I'm 30 now, she's 29. I'm writing this on a Sunday night, sitting on the same crappy couch I bought second-hand after moving out, hovering over the post button on a throwaway account, because I honestly don't know what I'm asking for: advice, validation, someone to tell me I'm not insane for how much that one sentence messed me up. Anyway, backing up, because these stories never start at the whisper on the dance floor. They start way before, in 100 small choices that don't feel like choices at the time. Lily and I met in first year uni, thrown together in a tutorial group for an 8 a.m. psychology class we both hated. I was there because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and Bachelor of Arts sounded vague enough to buy time. She was there because she'd read one book about cognitive biases and decided she was destined to save the world from bad decision-making. The first thing I really remember about her is her laugh. Not the sound exactly, but the way people turned towards it. She laughed with her whole body, head tipped back, hands on her knees, not caring if she snorted. I was the opposite, quiet, window seat kid who only spoke when I was sure I wouldn't sound stupid. We got paired for a presentation about attachment styles. I'd done the reading, she'd done the reading and then gone down several research rabbit holes and watched 5 TED Talks. We met up at the campus cafe to plan it, and somehow spent more time talking about our own insane families than the assignment. "So you're avoidant," she'd said, pointing a fry at me. Classic. "Excuse me," I'd protested. "I'm very emotionally available." "You just told me you pretend to be asleep when your mum calls," she said. "That's avoidant as hell." "She calls at 6 a.m., I argued. "That's a war crime, not a love language." She laughed, that full-bodied thing, and shook her head. "Whatever helps you sleep at night, Daniel." She was one of those people it was easy to tell things to. Maybe it was the psych thing. Maybe she was just naturally curious without being judgy. Either way, by the time the presentation rolled around, we knew more about each other's childhoods than I knew about some of my high school mates. We didn't start dating straight away. There was a year of orbiting each other first. Group hangs, late-night study sessions, 2 long hugs goodbye. I watched her date 2 guys who didn't appreciate her and listened to her drunkenly cry on my shoulder over both of them. She watched me fumble a situationship with a girl from my tutorial and told me I deserved better. We finally got together the night before our second-year midterms. Real romantic, I know. We were sitting on the floor of the library, surrounded by highlighters and half-eaten snacks. She was stress-crying over statistics. I made some terrible joke about standard deviations. "I'm going to fail this and then die alone in a share house with 16 cats," she groaned, forehead pressing into her textbook. "I'll live with you and we can share the cats," I said without thinking. She peered at me from under her hair. "You say that now," she said, "but you'll get tired of my mental breakdowns." "Lily, I sat with you in the bathroom for 45 minutes last week while you cried about dropping your burrito on the ground," I reminded her. "I'm clearly committed." She laughed, sniffled, and then looked at me very seriously. "Why aren't we dating?" she asked, my brain short-circuited. "I don't know," I managed. She leaned in, and suddenly we were kissing, clumsily, right there between the psych journals and the comfortable silence we'd built. It made a kind of sense that everything before that had just been preamble. The early years were good. Not perfect, we fought, mostly about stupid things like how often it was acceptable to order takeout or who was worse at replying to texts. But there was this underlying feeling that we were on the same team. We graduated, got our first jobs. I ended up in data analytics at a small company. She went into community mental health for a while and then switched to HR at a bigger firm when the burnout got too real. We moved into a crappy rental together with mold in the bathroom and a landlord who used character as an excuse not to fix things. We learned how to co-manage a fridge, how to share a bed when one person kicks in their sleep, how to fight and then still put the bins out. If you'd asked me back then, I would have said we were solid. We had our problems, sure. She was more social than me, wanted to go out more, meet new people, say yes to things. I was more of a homebody. She was impulsive in all the ways I was. I'd balance her out, she'd drag me into the world. That was the narrative anyway. Things really started changing in our 4th year together. She got a promotion, HR business partner, fancier title, more meetings, more responsibility. Suddenly she was staying back late, going to leadership offsites, networking events. That's where the real opportunities are, she'd say, kicking off her heels as she came through the door at 9 p.m, in the conversations after the official thing. I believed her, I was genuinely proud. I'd sit on the couch with my laptop, half watching Netflix, half doing work while I waited for her texts about how the night was going. It was around then that she started talking about this new manager in her department. Chris is actually pretty cool, she'd say, sipping wine. He's one of the few ones who gets that we're not just the feelings department, you know. Or Chris roasted the CFO in a meeting today. I swear I saw my soul leave my body. It was iconic. Or Chris said something interesting about career ceilings, like how we have to be our own advocates. I always feel like I'm being annoying when I do that. At first, he was just a character in her work stories, like her clueless colleague who forwarded memes to the CEO, or the receptionist who knew everyone's coffee order by heart. I'd nod along, make jokes, be the sounding board. The first time I met him, it was at a housewarming for one of her coworkers. He was exactly the kind of guy you picture when you hear charismatic middle manager, late 30s, good haircut. Expensive watch that he pretended not to care about. He shook my hand firmly, said, "So you're the famous Dan," in that way people do when they want you to feel special. "She talks about you a lot," he added, smiling at Lily like they had an inside joke. She rolled her eyes. "Probably complaining," she said. "Only about how spoilt you are," he replied. "I'm still waiting for my boyfriend to cook me lasagna after a 12-hour day." It was harmless banter on the surface. I joined in. We ended up in a group talking about podcasts. He had opinions about everything TM. I left that night thinking he was a bit full of himself, but whatever. You meet versions of that guy everywhere. What I didn't see was the way their worlds overlapped more and more, while ours stayed in the same orbit. I started noticing little things. Her phone lighting up with his name at 10 p.m. with some jokey meme. Her saying, "Hang on, Chris is calling, it's about tomorrow's board thing," and disappearing into the bedroom to talk. Her mentioning we when she talked about work projects, and sometimes I didn't know if she meant we the HR team or we me and him. I brought it up once, half joking. "You and Chris seem pretty tight," I said, chopping veggies while she sat on the counter scrolling through Instagram. "He's my manager," she said, shrugging. "We work closely, why?" "Just noticing," I said. "You talk about him a lot." She smirked, jealous. "No," I lied, "just checking if I should start a fan club." She laughed, hopped off the counter, kissed my cheek. "Please, the last thing that man needs is more people feeding his ego," she said. "You're still my favorite." And for a while, that was enough. The big cracks showed up about 6 months before we broke up, though at the time I didn't label them as cracks. Life just got weirder. She'd come home exhausted and snappy, too tired to talk, or wired and distant, talking a million miles an hour about strategy and long-term plans and how we're not living up to our potential. Once on a Sunday afternoon, we were lying on the couch, my head in her lap, some crime doco playing quietly in the background. Out of nowhere she said, "Do you ever feel like we got too comfortable too young?" I craned my neck to look up at her. "What does that mean?" She was staring at the ceiling. "I don't know," she said, "like we just slid into this life. Uni, first jobs, moving in together, we never explored." Explored what? Other places, other people, different versions of ourselves. I laughed, trying to keep it light. "I tried being a guy who goes clubbing every weekend in first year," I said. "Didn't like him, he was sweaty and broke." She didn't laugh. I'm serious, she said. Sometimes I feel like I woke up and I'm 30 and this is it. This cooch, this flat, this us. I pushed myself up, sat next to her. Is this us a bad thing? I asked. She looked guilty immediately, like she'd said something forbidden. No, she said quickly. God no, it's just I'm restless. Work is making me feel like I'm either about to jump or be pushed and I don't know which. Okay, I said, so let's talk about that. Do you want to travel, change jobs, move? I'm not welded to the cooch, you know. She smiled weakly, leaned her head on my shoulder. You're always so calm, she said. Sometimes it makes me feel like the crazy one. I'm not calm, I said. I'm terrified 80% of the time, I'm just quieter about it. She laughed at that and we dropped it. I wish we hadn't. The actual breakup was both sudden and not sudden at all. There wasn't one big betrayal moment, no cinematic catching her in bed with him scene. It was more like death by 1,000 paper cuts and one final, clean slice. The short version, she emotionally checked out, slid into something with Chris, then came home one Wednesday night and told me she needed to be honest. The longer version is boring in its familiarity, late nights at work, just drinks that turned into Yuba's home at 1 a.m., Maury jokes about how I was too good to her, Maury conversations where she talked about feeling stuck and I offered solutions she didn't want. Then one night she came home, dropped her bag, and stood in the doorway of the lounge with this weird, distant look on her face. I'd just finished washing dishes. The TV was playing some show I wasn't really watching. Can you pause that? She asked. My stomach dropped. Nobody asks you to pause Netflix for good news. She sat on the armchair across from me instead of beside me. Her hands were shaking. I did something, she said, and I need to tell you because I can't live with myself if I don't. My mouth went dry. Okay, I said, though every cell in my body wanted to say, no, don't, just pretend everything is fine. I've developed feelings for someone at work, she said, and a couple of weeks ago, we crossed a line. It wasn't graphic, she didn't give details, and I didn't ask for them because I didn't want them living in my head rent-free forever. All I really heard was, Chris, drunk after drinks, kissed, more than kissed. I sat there listening, feeling like my skin was 2 sizes too small. I'm so sorry, she kept repeating. You don't deserve this. You've never done anything but love me and I've just... I don't really remember what I said that night. I remember my heart pounding so hard it made me feel nauseous. I remember the taste of metal in my mouth. I remember saying, over and over, why did you tell me when you started feeling this way? Why didn't you give me a chance to fix things with you? I didn't want to hurt you, she said, which is such bullshit when you think about it. I kept thinking it was just a crush, that it would pass, and then it didn't, and then I did something I can't take back. Do you want to be with him? I asked. She started crying properly then. I don't know, she sobbed. I don't know anything, I just know I can't keep doing this to you. It's not fair. You deserve someone who isn't like me. We talked or tried to for hours. She said all the cliches. It's not you, it's me. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. She also said less cliched but somehow worse things, like sometimes when I picture my future, you're not in it and it scares me. In the end we agreed. It feels wrong to call it agreed, but whatever, to take a break. She went to stay with a friend. We texted a bit, had a couple of strained phone calls. She didn't reach out about counseling or working through it. She did, however, manage to change her relationship status to single on Facebook before I'd even told my mum what was going on. 2 weeks later, I saw a tagged photo of her and Chris at some work event, standing just a bit too close. A month after that, someone told me they started coming in together in the mornings. The line she'd crossed with him apparently wasn't a one-time thing. We officially broke up over coffee in a cafe that now makes me feel sick when I walk past it. I can't give you what you want, she said, stirring her latte. I thought I could, but I can't. I need to figure out who I am without being Lily and Dan all the time. And you need Chris to do that? I asked. She winced. It's not about him, she said. It was absolutely about him. When I eventually moved out, she'd already half-packed my things into boxes. Not in a malicious way, she labeled them neatly, even wrote little notes on some, like your favorite mug, which felt weirdly cruel, like putting a smiley face on a bullet. The months after that were ugly. I lost weight without trying. My brain replayed everything we'd ever done together and tried to insert Chris into the margins like some sick director's commentary. I went back and forth between hatting her, hatting him, hatting myself. My friends did their best. They took me out, sat with me while I cried, told me stories about worse breakups. My sister made me a spreadsheet of things to try now that you're single. which included join an indoor soccer team and finally learn to cook something that isn't pasta. It got better slowly. Time does its thing. I stopped waking up with my heart in my throat. I stopped checking her Instagram. I unfollowed both of them after the first photo of them clearly together popped up because I value my remaining sanity. And then came Mark and Jess's wedding. Mark had been my mate since high school. We introduced Lily and Jess, which meant the four of us had done everything together for years, double dates, weekends away, the whole cliché. When the save the date came through, I knew there was no version of this where I didn't go. I loved them. I wasn't going to miss their day because my ex and her midlife crisis affair partner might be there. Still, when I RSVP'd +0, there was this hollow feeling in my chest. This was supposed to be one of those events we went to together. We should have been arguing over what color tie I wore, or whether our gift was thoughtful enough. Instead, I went alone, in a suit my mum helped me pick because I'd convinced myself my old one carried sad breakup vibes. The ceremony was actually beautiful. Small garden, sun behaving, kids throwing petals in all the wrong directions. I saw Lily from a distance when we were finding seats. She looked like herself, just slightly sharper, like someone had pressed a saturation button on her life. New haircut, different dress style, but the same way she tilted her head when she laughed. Chris was next to her, hand resting on her back in that casual, claiming sort of way. I felt my chest tighten, but I got through it. I chatted to people, drank champagne, clapped too loudly when Mark and Jess did their first kiss. It was the reception where things went sideways. Alcohol plus speeches plus nostalgia is a dangerous mix. The tables were arranged in that way where you can't avoid anyone. I was at one with uni friends and a couple of random cousins. Lily and Chris were at the next table over, close enough that I could hear her laugh if I wasn't careful. Our first actual interaction was at the bar. I'd gone up to get another drink. She stepped up next to me, empty glass in hand. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then she cleared her throat. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I replied, eloquent as ever. "You look good," she said, and I hated how much my heart jumped at that. "So do you," I said, because I'm not a monster. Awkward pause. "How have you been?" she asked, doing that tilted head thing she does when she's pretending this is casual curiosity and not emotional landmines. "All right," I said, "work's busy, you?" She shrugged, "Same, wedding's nice, huh?" "Yeah," I said, "they seem happy." She smiled genuinely. "They do," she said softly. The bartender handed us our drinks, breaking whatever weird spell that was. She thanked him, then looked back at me. "I'm glad you came," she said. "I wasn't sure if you would." "They're my family," I said simply. She nodded. "Yeah," she said, "mine too." Then Chris wandered over, sliding an arm around her waist like it was the most natural thing in the world, and whatever almost conversation we were having evaporated. "Hey mate," he said to me, like we were two blokes at a barbecue. "Good to finally see you. Heard a lot about you from these two." He jerked his head towards Mark and Jess across the room. I just nodded, took my drink, and got the hell out of there. I thought that would be it. A few awkward near misses over the night, maybe a polite hug goodbye. I did not expect the whisper. It happened late in the evening, after the speeches, after the cake, when the dance floor was full of drunk uncles and toddlers way past their bedtime. I'd been dragged out by Jess's mum for a quick spin, and then abandoned near the edge of the dance floor, half amused, half ready to call it a night. That's when Lily and Chris floated past. They were dancing in that coupled-up way I always thought looked cheesy from the outside and very normal from the inside. His arms around her, her hands looped around his neck, their bodies fitted together like they'd done this a lot. My stomach twisted at the familiarity of the pose. I'd held her like that at so many parties, so many weddings where we joked about being next. As they turned, she saw me. For a second, something flickered across her face, surprise, then something else. Chris was mid-conversation with someone over her shoulder, laughing at some joke. She untangled one arm from around his neck, reached out, and brushed her fingers very lightly against my forearm as they passed. It was the smallest touch, but it sent a jolt through me. Then she leaned in, just enough that I could feel her breath near my ear, and said, so quietly I almost thought I'd misheard, "I miss you sometimes." Just like that, not "I miss you," not "I'm sorry," not "I made a mistake." "I miss you sometimes." And then they were past me, carried away by the swell of the song, her body folding back into his hands splayed on her back. She didn't look back. I stood there like an idiot, drink in hand, heart racing, trying to process what the fuck had just happened. My brain did this annoying thing where it started analyzing the sentence instead of just feeling it. Sometimes. What does that even mean? On Tuesdays, when he forgets her birthday, when she's scrolling through old photos and sees one of us at the beach. Part of me wanted to run after her, to grab her hand and say, "Then why aren't you with me?" Another part wanted to pretend I hadn't heard. To shove that sentence into the same mental box as all the other half-truths she'd given me. In the end, I did what I've always done. I froze. I walked outside instead into the cool night air past the smokers, down the little path by the fairy-lit trees. I leaned against a fence and finally let myself feel the heat behind my eyes. I thought I was over her. Not completely, maybe, but enough. Enough that I could see her with him and not feel like I was being hollowed out. But that one sentence cracked something open again. Because it told me two things at once. One, I wasn't crazy for thinking what we had mattered. There were things to miss. Two, she missed me and still chose to stay exactly where she was. A few minutes later, the door slid open and footsteps crunched on the gravel behind me. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. "I shouldn't have said that," she said softly. I wiped under my eyes quickly, hoping it was dark enough that she couldn't see. "No," I said, "you really shouldn't have." She came to stand next to me, leaving a polite gap between us. We stared out at the car park like it was fascinating. "I meant it," she said after a beat. "I do miss you, sometimes." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Do you want me to say thank you?" She sighed. "I don't know. Seeing you tonight with everyone, it reminded me of stuff. The way you always made sure Mark actually ate something before he drank. How you helped Jess with the kids so she could dance. The way you noticed things." "Those things didn't disappear when we broke up," I said. "I didn't switch them off like a light." "I know," she said quickly. "I know, that's kind of the point. You're still you, and I changed," I finished for her. She flinched. "Yeah," she said. "I did. I don't know if it's better or worse, just different." "Then why say that to me?" I asked, finally looking at her. "Why whisper that while you're literally in his arms? What did you want me to do with that information, Lil?" She looked wrecked, not in the glamorous, smudged mascara way, just tired. "Honestly," she said, "I don't know. I thought maybe you'd want to know that it wasn't all nothing, that I didn't just walk away and forget you." "That's not comforting," I said quietly. "That's cruel." "I didn't mean to be," she whispered. "I've never known how to not be selfish with you. That's the problem, isn't it?" I wanted to argue, to say, "No, you're not selfish, the problem is bigger than that." But the truth lodged in my throat, because she was selfish with me. She'd always taken more space in the relationship, filled more of the air. I'd let her. "I loved you," I said, because for all the therapy and time and self-help podcasts, that's still the thing stuck to the inside of my ribs. All the time, not just sometimes. Even when you were driving me insane, even when you were half out the door, I never did it halfway. Her eyes filled. "I know," she said. "That's what I mean. You loved me full-time and I only ever clocked in part-time towards the end. I knew it wasn't fair. I just couldn't force myself to feel something I didn't anymore." "That's the part I get," I said. "Feelings change, people grow in different directions. It sucks, but it happens. What I don't get is why you needed him to grow towards before you let me go, and why you think telling me you miss me sometimes now, while you're with him, is some kind of gift." She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Because I'm a coward," she said simply. "Because I couldn't deal with being the bad guy in my own story, so I tried to write it in a way where I was just tragically confused instead of actively hurting someone. I'm sorry." "I know," I said, "and I did on some level. I don't think she sat there plotting ways to break me. She just took the path of least resistance every time, which happened to run straight through my chest." Silence stretched between us. We could hear the bass from inside, muffled through the walls. Someone whooped, someone else yelled, "Shooey," because there's always one. "Do you ever think we could have fixed it?" she asked eventually, "if I'd told you earlier?" "Yeah," I said honestly. "I think about that a lot. I think about how different it might have been if you'd come home one night and said, 'I'm feeling things I don't want to feel. Can we work on us?' instead of waiting until you'd slept with your manager to declare it unfixable." Her face crumpled. "I don't know how to apologize for that in a way that makes it better," she said. "You can't," I replied. "That's the point." She nodded slowly. "He's not better than you," she said, unprompted. "You know that, right? This isn't some upgrade. He's messy. I'm messy with him. Sometimes I feel like I'm 15 again, and that's not always a good thing." I didn't know if she meant to say that last bit out loud. She winced immediately. "Then why are you with him?" I asked, genuinely curious. No bitterness left in the question, just confusion. "Because he fits who I am now," she said, choosing the words carefully. The version of me that wants to go out too much and drink too much and not think about what anything means. The version that doesn't feel guilty for not coming home by 10. The version that doesn't see every decision as part of this big, shared narrative. And I did. You always tried to build something, she said. That's who you are. You don't just date, you plan. You don't just live together, you think about mortgages and kids, names and where we'll be in 10 years. I thought I wanted that, but when it got close, when you started looking at houses on Domain and sending me links, I freaked out. He doesn't ask for any of that, he's just in the moment, it's easier, for now. For now, another phrase that lodged itself in my brain. I get it, I said, surprising both of us. Sort of doesn't make it hurt less, but I get it. She looked at me like she didn't quite know what to do with my understanding. You were always better at seeing all sides, she said. I just bulldoze ahead and deal with the fallout later. I sighed. Lily, I'm not your emotional safety net anymore, I said gently. You don't get to hold him at one end of the dance floor and then come out here and hand me pieces of your guilt. That's not fair on either of us. I know, she whispered. Then stop, I said. Stop telling me you miss me sometimes. Either you miss me enough to leave what you chose, or you don't. But I'm not going to be your nostalgia project while you test drive your chaotic era. That sounded harsher than I meant it when I heard it back in my head. She flinched, but then nodded. You're right, she said. You're right, I'm sorry. There was that word again. Sorry. It didn't change the past, but it sat between us like a small, sad offering. I hope it works out for you, I said, and I meant it in a weird way. Not because I wanted her happily ever after with the guy who helped blow up my life, but because if it didn't, if she crashed and burned there too, I knew some part of me would always wonder if I needed to swoop in and fix it, and I can't be that person anymore. She swallowed. I hope you find someone who doesn't just miss you sometimes, she said, someone who is sure. I shrugged, looked back at the hall. Maybe the first step is me being sure I deserve that, I said. She gave this sad little smile. You always deserved that, Dan, she said. You just picked me before I was capable of giving it. And that, I guess, was the closest we'll ever get to closure. We headed back inside separately. I avoided the table for the rest of the night. I danced with Jess's kids, took photos for Mark's parents, helped stack chairs when things wound down. I went home alone, crawled into my bed, and stared at the ceiling, replaying that whisper on a loop. I miss you sometimes. Here's the thing I've been turning over in my head since. I don't want to be a sometimes for anyone. Not in that way. I don't want to be the person someone thinks about when their current partner forgets to pick them up from the airport, or when a song we used to like comes on in a supermarket. Nostalgia isn't love, it's memory with good lighting. I loved her all the time, in the boring Tuesday nights and the exciting stuff, in the crying over burritos and the celebrating promotions. I showed up fully, even when I was scared. She couldn't or wouldn't do the same. I'm not a perfect victim in this story. I know that. I coasted sometimes. I let her do most of the emotional heavy lifting when it came to confronting hard stuff because I hate conflict. I leaned into the chill boyfriend persona so hard that maybe she felt like she was the only one reacting to anything. But I also know I didn't deserve half-truths and backup plans. I didn't deserve to be left for someone worse simply because he represented an easier version of adulthood. And I definitely didn't deserve to have that fact wrapped in a whisper on a dance floor like it was some kind of gift. So I'm here on Reddit, writing this out partly so I stop composing comebacks in my head at 2 a.m., and partly to say this to anyone who needs to hear it. If your ex ever comes back around with a "I miss you sometimes," be careful. That sometimes is them dipping a toe into your emotional pool to see if it's still warm, not an offer to jump back in and swim. They're trying to lighten their guilt, not actually change their life. You're allowed to want more than sometimes. You're allowed to want someone who misses you while they're with you, not just when they're lonely in the arms of someone who doesn't fit as well as they hoped. As for me, I don't know what my next chapter looks like yet. I'm back playing indoor soccer badly, hanging out with my nephew, slowly repainting this flat one wall at a time. I've started answering my mum's calls before 6 a.m. I'm learning how to be a whole person without being half of Lily and Dan. And if I ever run into her again at another wedding, and she leans in with that look in her eyes, I hope I'll have the strength to smile, step back, and leave that sometimes hanging in the air unanswered. Because the only whisper I want to hear from my next partner is, I don't just miss you sometimes, I choose you all the time.